Hey, you guys, welcome to the Joshua Houston podcast. I'm your host, Joshua, and I'm so glad that you are here today. Our guest is Jeff Rauseo, and if you, like me, love movies, you're going to love this episode. Jeff is a must follow on Instagram because he talks about all things movies. He's introduced me to movies that I didn't even know I would like, and he is definitely someone you're going to want to check out. And I think you're going to really like him as a person as well. We talk about, obviously, movies to the new book he has coming out and so much more. So I really hope you enjoy this episode with him today. If you're watching on YouTube, be sure to subscribe so you can stay up to date on all the conversations that we are having on this channel. And wherever you're listening or watching this streaming the podcast episode, thank you. Be sure to follow us there as well so you can stay up to date. So thank you guys so much for being part of this community. Thank you for listening and for watching wherever you're doing that. I really do appreciate that, and I hope you enjoy the episode. Hey Jeff, welcome to the podcast, man. Glad you're here.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's great to have you here. I am a big fan of what you do on Instagram with all the movies. I don't honestly know how the algorithms didn't put you in front of my feed sooner, but I connected with you in November and then saw all the content you were putting on with movies and stuff. And I was like, where's this guy been? Algorithms, come on.
Well, hey, that's my whole thing, right? I say the same thing, but this is why people find movies through me. I'm like, why aren't these movies showing up in the algorithms? The algorithms, man, it's a problem.
I know, the algorithm. I do want to talk with you about the algorithms because I think you have a unique perspective on that, just in terms of your following and working in marketing as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to start out with some movies. Obviously, you were mentioning
Sure.
People not finding movies and everything. I feel like it's one of those weird things where, even though we have streaming now, it's almost harder to find movies than the blockbuster days. Like, do you feel that way too?
Yeah. So I actually, shameless plug here. I'm writing a book about it right now.
Oh, nice.
There's a whole book coming out. It'll come out next year about like how just algorithms have totally changed how people find and consume movies, but also like the types of movies that are being made and who's making them and like what's getting promoted. Because it is true. It's when everything's run through an algorithm, then all you're getting is the general public's most popular recommendations. And the algorithms don't do a good job of like diving deeper into who you are, what you really like, where you're located, and when it does do that, it then puts you in a bubble and kind of holds you there. And it never lets you leave that bubble once it does get to know you. So it's really hard to like discover new stuff because you watch a couple comedies and then the algorithm's like, this guy loves comedies. So here's 50 more and just ignore every other genre, or hey, he likes this actor, so only show him those movies. Because the whole point of a streaming app is just to have you on the app as long as they can get you. They don't really care, honestly, whether you finish a movie, finish a show, like whether you watch 5 minutes or 5 hours, like they want you there. So that's why at every opportunity you finish a show and it's got 4 more recommendations and it's starting the next one right away. Like it doesn't even give you a chance to think and be like, did I like this? Is this, do I want to keep going?
Yeah.
I just, Netflix, Prime, Disney, whatever you're on, I mean, you get that home screen and there's like, these categories that are kind of broken out for you, but then there's 4 or 5 movies in each one. It's the same movies. They push their original stuff above everything else. So now that everyone's making originals, like Netflix back in 2015 is a much different experience than Netflix in 2025 now, where they used to have a bunch of movies and like push popular stuff from all over the place. And now it's like, what do they want to push? They want to push Squid Game. They want to push Stranger Things. Like they spent a lot of money on that. So I get it, but they're kind of software companies that are masquerading as entertainment companies. Like
That's a good way of putting it.
it's just software. It's social media algorithms.
It
It's
is. It
getting
is
your,
social media.
that's it. Yeah.
Yeah, just like Instagram, or I guess this is say Meta, YouTube, and Twitter, X. All of them just want you to stay, and they reward the
Yeah.
content that keeps you on longer. It feels like the same thing with the streaming platforms. Because to your point, you go on. A great example is my Netflix is filled with like sports stuff because I've watched some, especially before all the ESPN 30 for 30 documentaries went over to Disney. I would watch as many of those as I could on there, and now it's like, so you just want to watch sports on Netflix. It's like,
Right.
I love a good sports doc, but I would like I would like to explore more as well. And
Right.
yeah, unless you find a content creator like yourself who's kind of sharing what's out there, it can be tough to find new stuff because it's so repetitive. And another thing that I've noticed recently, and you may know a little more of the insight to this, is I've noticed a lot of shows, especially companies like Netflix, will drop, and then they'll announce like a month into it that they've canceled it. And I'm like, what metric exactly are they looking for to keep it going?
Yeah. I mean, it's just that immediate instant gratification is like what they need and what they want. And yeah, it can be so quick. A lot of stuff's been canceled. I think I was just reading an article. There were over a dozen Netflix shows that got canceled this year after one season that were originals that they invested a lot of money in. And they just, they cut the cord really quick on that stuff. It's not necessarily unique to like Netflix. I mean, network sitcoms and stuff like that's always happened. Like you have shows there's so many examples of like the shows that were cut or canceled too early, and stuff gets canceled mid-season before its run is even over. So it's always kind of happened, but even in that case, you'd get 8 episodes and that would get you 2 or 3 months. Like Netflix is canceling stuff within the month if it's not
Oh yeah.
hitting. And it's all risk management because it's been corporate-fied all of entertainment. It's just they're afraid to take risks. When they take a risk, they need instant gratification. And it's kind of funny because at the same time, they don't really want you, the viewer, to take risks because they want you to stay on the app with what's comfortable. So it's kind of this like, it's a weird double-edged sword where like if they try something new, they have to recommend it to everybody because naturally their system is not going to do that because it's new and it's different.
Yeah.
So stuff gets canceled, and yeah, it's funny that people find things through like Instagram accounts like mine because again, like that's also double-edged sword. Like we're all just playing the algorithm game on Instagram to try to get this in front of you. And like you said, like I've been doing Instagram for years, and you just found me a few months ago. Like, and that happens all the time. It's just
Yeah,
it's really hard to get that originality like out in front of people because the algorithms, no matter what, I'm a marketing guy. It's like no matter social media, no matter what platform you're on, no matter what software you're on, streaming, you name it, like they just want you to be comfortable and keep using their app.
I know they really want you to just stay on, and that's the goal. And
Yeah,
to
it's
your
an
point,
echo chamber.
when that's the goal, then it really cuts out a lot of the quality. I would just, especially when it comes to movies, say art,
Yeah,
that goes into it because, it feels a lot like movies and shows have been reduced to like what's going to either, do really well in the box office, what's going to do really well on streaming. And I know the economy of it has changed too because studios used to be able to bank on the fact that we're going to get DVD sales, and so that's a huge. I think it was Matt Damon I heard kind of do a deep dive on that one time, and how that's changed. Like, do you think there's what do you think is the future for more artistic films? Is it just the indie route? Has the theater just been reduced to like superhero movies and like big budget films?
I think that there's a correction coming somewhere. You're seeing them, basically the movie theaters are for lack of a better word, dying. And the only thing that keeps them alive is the $200 million blockbuster that has general mass appeal to everybody and
Mm-hmm.
needs to make $1 billion for it to make any money with marketing costs and everything else on top of it. So that's basically the movie that plays in theaters now. Like it has to be Deadpool, it has to be Wicked, it has to be Dune, it has to be Star Wars. It has to
Moana.
have it has to have an IP. Like if it
Yeah.
doesn't have an IP, it's just not going to get financed by
Mm-hmm.
a studio. If you look, I was just looking the top 15 movies at the box office this year. There weren't any original
Yeah.
films,
None.
none, which is crazy that there's that many IP, driven franchises and sequels being made, but also just crazy that people aren't supporting. But there is this like niche market, like horror movies do especially well, even though they're
Mm-hmm.
original. They tend to make their money back. But you're kind of going to have this correction, I think, where it's just like movie theaters are just the big events, and everything else kind of has to find its way. But I think there's going to be like some art house, smaller indie type theaters that start to pop up and play even older movies. And you're seeing that, like, it's kind of the Draft House model. If you know Draft House Films and Alamo Draft House, we have one here now in Boston. They're kind of expanding, but like they play first run stuff, but they also do a whole screening series of here's stuff from the 70s, the 80s, and 90s, and those sell just as well. And, they've brought in food and drink and other things, merchandise, like other ways to make money as part of their theater model. And the big theaters are kind of trying to do that with like the popcorn buckets, like kind of being their like big piece of merch that's trying to keep them afloat right now, which is crazy that like a popcorn bucket is what's doing it. But that's like they need to find something else. But I think that's where like these other theaters start to come into play, and it becomes more like local, regional. But realistically, a lot of this stuff is just going to move to like at home and people watching in their homes. TVs are bigger than ever. Surround sound is easier and cheaper than ever to set up. Like
Mm-hmm.
you don't have to deal with getting tickets, getting a babysitter, paying overprice, concessions. Like, so the $25 at home rental is probably the future for a lot of movies that aren't tentpole type stuff, or have that cult kind of horror. Like horror seems to be the one kind of that it has that cult following that will get people to theaters, but not much else does these days that's original.
Yeah, and they're also divided up into their streaming platforms. And
Yeah,
so that's the other thing that makes renting it weird is because, like it's probably going to pop up on like Peacock or
right.
Disney or Max. And so you just kind of put yourself in this waiting period of like, I'll just rent it when it comes out, whenever
Hmm.
that is, or watch it on streaming when it comes out because I'm already paying for streaming, you know? And then there's the other thing too that it really has changed even from what I remember growing up is theaters have just gotten so expensive. Like you're
Yeah,
saying, there are plenty of theaters, here in Texas that are the studio movies. You got a bar, you got food, you got that kind of stuff. Um, but it is just wild expensive to go to the
yeah,
theater. So like this past holiday season, we saw Moana and Wicked. I would have loved to see Gladiator in theaters. That's like a great theater movie, but it just like between time and money, it just didn't work out because if I were to go on a date with my wife and we were to go see Gladiator, get popcorn, get drinks, that's like a $50. That's like a $50 date, easy, and that
yeah,
doesn't even include if we go out and eat beforehand. And so even just the cost of going to the theater. I remember going to the Dollar Theater growing
right.
up, and then you had Blockbuster, and I'm not really sure with streaming and with them all divided up. I'm not really sure how movie theaters look 10 years from now. I mean, I know things change
Yeah,
slowly, but it just does feel like unless you're a part of a big studio that can, like you're saying, Moana, Wicked, a Gladiator type, you can pull off a big box office. It's all relegated to streaming, And then you're caught in algorithms.
Yeah. Well, and to your point, it's just like people are happy to wait and just watch it at home. I mean,
Hmm.
I love a movie theater. I would love to go to more movies. There's way less movie theaters than ever before. There are several around me that have closed just in the last couple of years. Like, so the options are totally limited, and it's super expensive. Yeah, dinner, movie, babysitter, $20 an
Babysitter.
hour. Like, you go, and the movies are all 3 hours long, so you're talking about with a half an hour of trailers. I mean, you're in for $100 on a babysitter
Yeah.
before you see the movie. It's a $250 night
Yeah.
to see a movie where I could rent it at home and even like get takeout and get snacks and like for under $50,
Yeah, exactly.
we're seeing that movie. So it's you could do that 5 times over. So it's really hard to convince people, especially when it comes to streaming so quick. Like we just watched Wicked on New Year's Eve at home because it's already out. I had the digital copy of it and we watched it at home and I'm like, when did that came out, like what, Thanksgiving
Hmm.
ish time? I
Yeah.
mean, so it was in theaters for four to
Yeah, for a couple
five
weeks.
weeks, and then you're getting it at
Yeah.
home. Whereas in the past, like that's the type of movie that would be in theaters for months, and then it would be months before you got rental copies. You could be waiting
Months.
6, 9, 12
Yeah.
months easily before you could watch that at home. And so then you have the incentive to go sometime. You have a longer time period to do it over that couple of months that it's running, and you have more incentive to go because it's going to be a year before you watch it. And like with
Hmm.
their model changing, and you're going to keep seeing streaming subscription costs go up because this is how
Oh
they make
yeah.
their money now. Like
Yeah.
I wrote about it in the book, but it's like if you look at what Disney Plus was when it started and where it is now, there aren't many things that have increased in price as much as streaming services have.
Yeah. Oh
And
yeah.
it's getting to a point now where it is more expensive. Everyone cut the cord
Hmm.
of cable to go to streaming services, and now streaming services, if you have 4 or 5 of them, are way more expensive than a cable
It
package,
is.
and they're
And
going up every year.
there's been multiple times I've thought, man, Netflix is like $20 a month. Is this worth it?
I remember paying 7.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes, I remember paying that and they would send you DVDs.
right. They actually had to ship stuff to you. Yeah.
Yes. uh so let's do this. Let's kind of frame a little bit of what we're talking about and maybe give listeners a quick rundown kind of on the economics of making a movie from like studio to theaters and a bit how they're different entities because I feel like I'm somewhat familiar, probably not as much as you, but in case someone's wondering like, well, why is it an issue with like no DVD sales now and they have to make all their money in theaters or versus what they make in streaming, like kind of explain a little bit of the economics of how a movie is made.
Yeah. So I mean, when basically right now there's 2 types of movies being made, and we've kind of lost the middle of the road movie. So it's either you either got a $200 million movie, which comes with a $200 million budget for
Hmm.
marketing as well. So basically, whenever you see a movie and it says, "Hey, the budget's 200 million," if it's that big a movie, you can double that at least for marketing, and you'll see it. It's stuff's
I
everywhere.
can't imagine what Wicked's marketing budget was. I feel like they
Insane.
advertised that thing for 6 months before it came out.
Yeah, easily, easily. So yeah, that's a movie that probably cost 5 or 600 million dollars before it even touched a theater, with just the amount of stuff. But then that's why the onus is all on, like, you have to opening weekend make $100 million or you're dead in the water, and they'll pull that thing quick now. You'll see
Hmm.
movies pulled within 2 weeks, kind of like Netflix cancels shows, because if it's not working in theaters, they'll just pull it and they'll try to get your money on the back end somewhere through a streaming
Hmm.
service. Like they'll just say, oh, okay, well, let's get the recurring revenue at least and try to recoup some of this. And we never had that before. So yeah, it used to be that type of movie, you'd make that movie, the budget would be much less, the marketing budget would be much less, and then you would have 3 months in theaters. Then you would have rental sales ahead of time to the rental stores. So like,
Hmm.
think about how many blockbusters there were and how many copies of Titanic they each
Yeah.
had. Those are, and they would sell them for crazy, like $70-$80 per tape to a rental store because they're making recurring revenue off of it. So it wasn't just like you could buy a movie now on DVD for $20. They were upcharged
Yeah.
super high. But they would have, tens of thousands of stores buying 10 copies a piece. They sell 1 million rental copies at $80 a piece. Well, you made $80 million just on that before it's even hit the store shelves. And back in the day, that's big money. That's big money on the back end that a lot of movies could get. And I think I know the Matt Damon clip you're talking about because he said you can't make that middle of the road $30 million movie that makes 30 million at the box office, and that would be considered a failure now because there's no more money on the back end. Whereas sometimes they would sell double to triple that in DVD sales and VHS sales and rentals and everything else. So now that income has been wiped out, you're either the $5 to $10 million indie film that's very low risk and hopes to make 30 or 40 million, and if you're lucky it cracks 100 million and it's a huge success. Or you're the top end blockbuster and you have to dominate the theaters, and the theaters get very little cut of all of this, which is also why theaters are getting killed. The negotiations between studios and theaters, the theaters have lost a ton of money. They get almost nothing the opening weekend. And so without movies running 2, 3, 4, 5 months later, they're making no money. Studios taking it all on the front end. They're taking all the streaming on the back end. But the DVD sales, VHS sales, there's a clip of, I don't know if you know the movie Grandma's Boy, which is a very dumb but funny, like, stoner comedy. It was like an Adam Sandler, I think is his production company. He's not in it. But there's a clip of Nick Swardson, who was in that, on a podcast. And he says, that movie bombed, but did $100 million in DVD sales on the back end over the years. So actually became this massive success, but everyone thinks it was a total bomb just because it didn't do well in theaters. Like that whole like cult movie phenomenon, like it almost can't happen anymore. Like there's a lot of examples like that. Like The Big Lebowski bombed in theaters, but has probably gone on to sell tens, if not hundreds of millions of dollars on DVD and merch and Blu-ray and everything else that's come out. So you just don't have that anymore. Yeah. It's you get in, you spend all the money. It's almost like playing the lottery, really. Like you buy a bunch of scratch tickets and you just hope that one of them hits. And if it doesn't, well, then on to the next project from some, Sonic or Moana 2 or Toy Story 5, or it has to be something recognizable that makes $1 billion in a month. Because there's just nothing that's it. All your revenue's there. Unless you play the long game, that, we're paying $150 a year for Disney Plus, and they hope, well, maybe we can get somebody to sign up because this movie's an exclusive, and we'll, over 5 years, we'll get $700 from them. You're playing that long-term, like, software as a service type business, which just doesn't work for movies, really. It doesn't work for entertainment. It's going to kill movie theaters, and it's going to kill originality, and it's going to kill, just like that $10-20 million movie that used to do really well and had all the upside. Like there's almost no upside anymore.
Yeah, and you even see streaming services now who they're all incorporating essentially live sports into it because that's such a revenue generator. And so it's like, dang, they're all struggling even just on subscriptions. And so now they're dividing and conquering with live TV to supplement. And you see that, and to your point, it's like, there's no way these studios are going to do a $30 million movie because, it sounds ridiculous to think, well, when they have that much money, margins are small, but they really are.
They're small. They're tight. Yeah. A lot of it is really, really tight. And then you have, then you can play the Hollywood accounting game where they'll tell you your movie failed and it made no money, even if they're making some money at the top. And so it looks bad on paper, so you don't get the next movie. You don't get the budget next time. It's like they play so many games, but the live sports is kind of like that's the last thing truly that cable had going for it was live entertainment, specifically sports, and the ad revenue they could get from that. So once they lose that and it starts going to Netflix and Paramount and Prime and everybody else where it's already headed,
Mm-hmm.
cable's probably done. But yeah, it's I don't know. I don't even know what these platforms are sometimes because Netflix is so different. Netflix 10 years ago, I would not have logged on to Netflix and seen Jake Paul fighting Mike Tyson.
No.
That's not something they would have been interested in. It's not something they would have cared about. It wasn't their focus. And now it's just like, it's really content
Mm-hmm.
over art. It's,
Yes.
it's really just like building long form social media content and trying to put it on platforms like Netflix,
That is such a
reality
good way of
TV.
looking at it.
It's all the same. It's just content.
Yeah. Even like you mentioned Netflix, they had the fight, they had the Tom Brady roast, which I know
Yeah.
that did really well. You had the Christmas Day football game with the Beyonce halftime.
Right.
It's just crazy how much of this is tied to sports. It's very like pop culture relevant, but it's always tied to some sports related streaming that they do. And yeah, that just feels like the direction they're going now because they turn it into, a bit of a Super Bowl. I forget how many people Netflix said they had streamed the Tom Brady roast, but it was like significantly more than almost any of their other content. And so
Yeah.
that's just going to reinforce for them like we got to do more stuff like this going forward. And so yeah, it will be interesting to see what that means for these studios. Do you think they're and maybe I should ask it this way: is there a renaissance bit on DVDs, kind of in the same way there was with vinyls? How like vinyl records now outsell CDs, even though streaming's still king on that. Do you think DVDs and VHS could kind of have an emergence like that?
Yeah, I think we're kind of at the early stages of that. I think that is hopefully what's happening now. If you look at actual sales numbers for physical media, for DVD, Blu-ray, everything, it is still down like 10 to 20% year over year, and it has been for the last decade since streaming hit. But I'm waiting for it to plateau, which I think is coming soon, and people are realizing that with the amount of money you're spending each month on the streaming service, and just do the calculations of like, hey, how much do you actually watch? Like if you watch 5 to 7 movies a month, which I think for people who don't love movies as much as I do, like that's a fair amount of movies. That's 1, 2 a week. Say you watch. I mean, you can buy those on DVD right now for like, or even on Blu-ray in higher formats for $5 to $10 easily, and spend about $40 to $60 maybe on watching those movies, versus you're paying for 6 streaming services at $20 a month, and you're paying 2-3 times as much money to watch the same content. So I think people are starting to come around to like, especially as the prices keep going up, people are coming around to the fact that, hey, this value is not really great right now unless you spend like all day on it, and they're going to start cutting some of these services. Like I just don't see them all surviving, and when some of them go, that brings back the sort of renaissance of like physical media and DVD, Blu-ray, and there's also just like vinyl, there's so many, like the stuff's not really coming from Sony Music or anything. Like it's coming from these independent labels that are licensing things out and then doing really cool special editions and collectors stuff. And like that's the way the market shifted, and that's really the way that the studios have shifted too, as they've de-emphasized it. Like Disney doesn't do their own DVD, Blu-ray stuff in-house anymore. They ship it out to actually Sony, believe it or not, who handles it all for them and still does a ton of that stuff.
Wow.
Universal and Warner Brothers have teamed up, and now they actually have a co agreement to do physical media and kind of like leverage each other's resources to keep that going. And like that would have never happened before. You would have never seen Universal and Warner Brothers come together. And then there's places like Paramount that are just licensing out to all these really cool independent labels who they just let do the restoration work, build your own artwork, do your own special features. They just here's the film, go do what you want with it. And they're all doing a great job at releasing this stuff that, honestly, there aren't many people left at the major studios who are working on this. They've become software companies. So those people now work at these smaller indie labels, and they're just like record labels. That's the way I look at them. A lot of them do vinyl records as well. Like, it's a very popular crossover. So that's the way it's definitely heading. And we're like, this was the first year where I made a top 10 list of my favorite stuff that's come out on home video. And I don't think I might have had one that was actually from the studio. Everything else was from an independent label or something that was licensed out, because that's just the way it's moving. And I think that's okay. And I think people will find that stuff, and it will eventually plateau and then come back a little bit. And I see so many people online every day. I get a message about, hey, I want to jump back into this. I want to buy a DVD again, or where can I get a Blu-ray player? I want to buy some of this stuff. I see it at this, online for $3. I'm like, why am I paying for streaming?
Exactly.
The quality's better on physical media. I mean, there's a lot of arguments that are the same as vinyl. You have ownership of it. Nobody can take it away from you. You own it. It's the highest quality. You can watch something. It's the best sound. It's the best picture. Like, all that stuff that people love about vinyl and CDs and everything. Like, very much the same argument, which I think is why it will come around.
Yeah. Well, to your point, and I know you talk about this too on your social media, just the idea of investing in your home theater and then collecting those DVDs. I mean, you can make a great experience, not just from movies, but then if that TV and sound system is what you use to watch live sports and stuff like that, and you got a killer way to consume TV and media, and truly less expensive than streaming and going to the theater.
It can, if you look at it long term, like that's what I think the argument would be. I think everybody in the world right now has a short term look on a lot of things, and the $15 a month doesn't seem like a lot, because there's a reason they charge you monthly, right? It seems like less money up front, but if you look at all of that together, and you're spending a couple $1,000s a year on streaming services.
Really?
You take 2 or 3 years worth of that and you put it into a TV and some decent speakers and a little bit of a movie collection. Like, not only are you getting a better experience, but you're also like just in total control, and you become you are your own algorithm. Like, you build your own collection of
own algorithm. I like
personal tastes, and you build your own collection of stuff, and you're not relying on scrolling and 20 minutes of scrolling before you decide what to watch. Really? You bring that kind of video store experience into your house. Browse the shelf. You got your favorites. You bought some new stuff you haven't seen yet. Make a couple piles and go through it. And then when you're through those, the beauty is you may not get much for them, but you could give them to a friend. You can trade them in. You could sell them, and then buy a few more. And just, and it's going to be cheaper long term than streaming would be to do that.
Yeah. And I love that too. I remember with Blockbuster, you go there, and unlike streaming now where you can watch the trailer and be like, I don't know. You just had to kind of go off like, oh, this is a cool cover. And you pick it and you watch the movie you maybe never would have watched anyways. And I think that's a really cool, unique experience in terms of kind of picking a movie or choosing what to watch that. Like, I know my kids don't get, because they just watch what they want to watch on streaming. Right. They do that a bit with vinyls. We do have a vinyl record player and a good little vinyl collection, and so they'll ask to like listen to music for dinner, and I think they enjoy the nostalgia of that. But yeah, that would be a great thing to replicate, just like an at-home Blockbuster. you know, that experience.
I mean, you make a real commitment to what you're watching, which you don't have right now. Like, no, you don't. If you start watching a movie on Netflix, a lot of people, I would love to look at their stats, and they'll probably never release them, but I would love to look at stats at how many movies that are started on Netflix actually get finished. Mm-hmm. And my guess would be it's not a very high number. I think a lot of people, and they put it on in the background too. There's no real commitment to watching, versus you go to Blockbuster and you take that movie home. Well, what are you going to do? It's 10 o'clock at night. Blockbuster's closed.
Yeah.
That's the movie you're watching.
That's it.
And you know what? You might find something you end up really liking by the end because you stuck with it.
Yeah.
You might find something you hate, and okay, I don't want that next time. But there isn't that like intention, and there's no human like connection to it. It's a machine versus going to the store, somebody giving you a recommendation, like talking with the guy next to you who's also browsing the shelf, who sees you pick this out and goes, "Oh, that was good. That was, I liked that. That was cool. If you like this movie, you'll probably enjoy that." Yeah. Like there's none of that. You're just totally in your own bubble. And so much stuff just gets, I actually just read an article that said Netflix is like working on content specifically that can just be put on in the background, and that they're like telling people who are writing scripts to write in like really important moments, or like make them louder or more intentional so people do look up and go, "Hey, this is important," which to me is just like defeats the purpose of a movie. Like don't watch it if you're not going to watch it. Just, scroll on your phone or whatever if that's the mood you're in. It makes no sense, but they just want you on the app, so they truly don't care what you like or what you enjoy. As long as the app's going and it's running, they're getting what they want.
And I wonder too if that is because I know YouTube specifically has had a lot of success with that, where people just put on a video, someone talking about it, whatever, or family blog, whatever, and they just run it in the background. So YouTube's able to just like have a lot of ad revenue off of that. And so I guess these streaming services are just kind of trying to copy that, where they replace it, and instead of going on YouTube, just go on Netflix or Max or wherever.
YouTube is still their biggest competitor when it comes to watch time. YouTube is still the most watched thing, even on TVs, with the amount of people that have the app on their TV.
Yes.
So their whole competition is YouTube. And so that's how they've naturally evolved, for better or worse, to match that.
And I think what makes your content so relevant is it does feel like when you would go into Blockbuster and you'd ask someone working there, like, "Hey, what's a good movie? What have you been watching recently?" And they give you that recommendation of like, "This one's good, this one's good. What are you into?" kind of stuff. Like you really don't get that anymore with your movie experience. And so you really are like filling that space with what you make in terms of recommending those things to people. When did you really start getting into movies?
I would say, I've always been a big movie fan. Like even as a kid, I watched Jaws is my favorite movie. I watched that way too young, but like I watched that when I was like 5. Like On the Cape, where that's my villain origin story. If anyone ever asks, if I turn into a shark someday, that's great. That's what I say. I literally watched it at like 5 years old on a VHS tape at my grandparents' house, which was on the Cape, where they, in the waters. Then I would go to the beach in the waters where they literally shot that movie, and just be like,
great. I love that.
Everything's fine. Back then, there were no sharks in the water. Now there actually are.
Yeah.
So it's kind of crazy. But even way back then, I would watch older stuff like that. And I grew up on like the Jurassic Park and Back to the Future and Indiana Jones and all the stuff that like, I was a little bit younger, but my dad loved that stuff. I watched that stuff. We watched a ton of movies, and my dad had a DVD. Like we always had DVD, VHS. So it was always a thing. I probably got deep into it like once I got to college and kind of had more free time. And, when you're sitting in a dorm room and like, I think I had like Mondays and Fridays off one semester, just like absurd schedules. And you have all this free time just in the middle of the day. So it was like, put on a movie, So I watched a ton of stuff for the first time in college. And then that kind of, I dove into, I got a little bit of money and I was like, I want a home theater system. It came with a Blu-ray player just by chance. So I was like, well, okay, I invested in, this little speaker system and a nice TV. Might as well go get the discs that'll look really good on it, and just kind of ballooned from there into like this massive collection and much deeper love for movies. But, I honestly don't think without the collection, without have taking that turn into the physical media side of things, that I'd have seen, I don't know, 3/4 of the stuff that I have seen now, and the stuff that I watch. Like most of that was discovered either because I was at a store or I was looking for something, or, just you buy one movie and you're like, wow, that was incredible, and you go look for the director's other movies, and a lot of times they're not out there on streaming. So you buy another copy, and then once you get online, I got on social media and started posting stuff. Well, now I'm seeing what other people are buying, and it was all just super unique stuff. Like, it wasn't just the latest movie. It was, hey, this new version of a movie from 1973 just came out, and it's fully remastered, and it's a great film that nobody talks about. Like, perfect, let me check it out. So, like, yeah, I've expanded my knowledge. I mean, I still have a long ways to go, but the collection is really what I think did it, and really kickstarted things deeply for me.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that because it reminds me of, growing up, like listening to music. I remember you would go to the store, you'd buy a CD, and you would actually listen through the CD,
Yeah.
usually the first time, right? And I know artists have, I kind of fought back and forth with like Spotify and Apple about stuff like that, because they do structure their CDs artistically like that. And when it's all streaming, you just kind of jump to, well, what's the popular song on it, or you don't even have to go to the CD. And so I can totally see how you doing that physically with the DVDs introduce you to, like, oh, let me go check out this director. Oh, let me go buy another DVD of their movie. And I think that's a really powerful way to actually learn and grow in the art that these people put out. When did you really start getting into it on social media?
I've been going for about a decade now.
Wow.
So I
Instagram
started
that whole time?
Instagram was first. I started my own little blog for a little bit, and was writing stuff. And then I got into Instagram, I want to say late 2015, 2016. Just kind of like posting pictures of movies I was watching, like just collection stuff. I was like one of those faceless accounts for a long time. I did not want to put my face out there. I was too like nervous to do it. So that went on for a while. And then in late 2017, 2018 is when I launched the YouTube channel and like really put my face out there for the first time. I'd also just like moved out of my parents' house, had my own space. So it was just like easier to record things too and make a video. But that's when it really kicked off, was around then, and then started doing more on YouTube for a long time. And then more recently I've kind of shifted back to a lot more Instagram and like short form stuff. Although, I still upload to YouTube a couple times a month. It's been about 7 or 8 years that I've been going hard on social media, and probably the last 2-3 ish that like I've really started to get some traction. So it's a grind.
It is. Yeah, it's a big grind because there's always content that needs to be made. It's big. And how do you, especially as someone, I think you have like over 500,000 followers on Instagram.
Close.
Yeah, right in there. And so how do you balance like not just that success on social media, but then kind of the expectation of content that comes with it, while also you still have your job, you still have your family, you have this other demanding aspect. How do you balance all of that?
Honestly, it's I ask myself that question a lot. How am I doing this? Because it is a lot. Yeah. I mean, I don't think a lot of people realize that, even who follow me on Instagram, because the Instagram blow up is kind of recent. Like over the last 2 years, I went from like 20,000 followers, which I had for a long time, to I think it's 425,000 now. A lot of people think I just do that full time because they see anybody with like hundreds of thousands. Yeah. And they're like, well, you must just do this full time. It's like, yeah, it doesn't. Not really. You need a job. I need insurance for my family and stuff.
I need insurance.
So yeah, it's, I don't know. The way I do it is just, I just kind of, being luckily working for a company that's like remote friendly and super flexible, it, allows me to do stuff with my family. If you got to go to a doctor's appointment or something, like those little things that would take up a lot of time if I was stuck 8 to 5 somewhere all day. Like
Exactly.
we can be a little more flexible with. They're super great about that, and I'm very thankful that they are, and they understand, like, having especially young kids. Both of my kids are under 4, so
Yeah. You're
it's
in it, man.
it's yeah. I mean, it's chaos. So that helps a lot. Like, I don't think I'd be able to do as much as I can do without that, because now, I get an hour lunch break, and it's like, well, perfect. I'm here. I'm sitting in my office, in my room, full of movies, collection stuff. Like, you're kind of inspired already. You're in there all day. So when I get that hour, I can make 5 or 6 videos in that hour. They won't all be edited and everything, but I can shoot a bunch of stuff. So you kind of just do it in batches. Like, a couple times a week, I'll just say, hey, that lunch break is working lunch today, and I'm shooting 5 or 6 videos, and then I'm good for the next, 10 days. And I'll just edit one every once in a while and get it out there.
Yeah.
But
So you do
that's
your
all
own
it really
editing?
is. Yeah, I do it all. The editing, any of the
Yeah.
like graphics and stuff, YouTube, when I'm doing thumbnails and all that editing, like that's all me. I do it all. So it's you just have to really batch out your time, and like
Yeah.
even just take a couple nights a week where I know, like, all right, after the kids go to bed, I'm locked down for an hour and a half, 2 hours. I'm going to get some work done. Like, because I'm going to send some emails, follow up on some stuff, because I have a email newsletter too. Like,
Yeah.
just bang some of that stuff out and just really batch out your time. You have to schedule it well, but I feel like I'm okay at that. I went to college remotely for a couple of years, and then
Oh,
so
okay.
when I started working remotely, it was not like a huge shock. I like
Yeah.
the whole time management, being able to focus and stay on task, like, while working at home, just wasn't a huge shock when that all happened during COVID. And then I've been home since then. Every job I've had since then is remote. So I don't know. I just, that's it. It's just really like time management and just maximizing your time, and just realizing, like, you don't overdo it either. Like, there's everybody's definition of quality is different. So don't worry too hard about, spending 5 hours editing a 90-second video to get all the transitions right and all the it's like, realistically, people kind of like the authenticity above all else. Like, you don't always need to be fancy.
Yeah.
And so, once I got past that, like, do my videos look as good as other people with the amount of followers I have? No. But you know what? It doesn't matter. I get more engagement sometimes because people are connecting with the person, not,
Yeah.
they don't care about the flashiness. So little things like that, but just consistency and time management is huge, and just making sure it doesn't take over your life. Like, it's just not,
Yeah.
it's we're recording this like right after Christmas. Like, realistically, I didn't do much for the last 10 days when it came to content.
Yeah.
It was Christmas time. I just kind of said, forget it. And you know what happened? One of my videos from like 3 months ago, all of a sudden just decided to start getting a bunch of
Isn't that
views.
wild?
So yeah, I have this video that's received 4 million views in the last month that I posted in October. So it's almost like, sometimes it's like, if you just take a break and just let the stuff kind of
Yeah.
percolate and get out there, like, sometimes stuff like that just happens. So
Yeah.
don't stress yourself out about having to post
Yeah.
every single day. And these things have a long life now because of the algorithms and the way that they've shifted. It's not all just, it's actually kind of different from the streaming services. It's not all recency bias. I get reels on Instagram that are literally 2 years old sometimes. Old sports. I was literally watching one the other day. I was like, what is this clip from? It was from the Warriors playing the Celtics in the finals 2 years ago. And that came across my feed just organically because I like basketball and I'm a Celtics fan. I was just like, that's unbelievable that still has life over 2.5 years ago. But this stuff does. So like,
Yeah.
you can't stress about it too much. Just let it kind of play out. And when it hits and you get lucky, it will. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But the follower number isn't everything either. It's, the number I have on Instagram is huge, but the amount of like core engaged people is a lot lower. A lot of it's a vanity metric. You're more worried about the 1,000 people who you closely connect with than the 400,000.
Yeah. How many videos do you usually, or movies do you usually watch in a week?
Well, post kids, it's a lot less
Yes.
because I used to be at the theater like couple times, 2 to 3 times a month, plus watching stuff at home. But I actually just checked Letterboxd, which I use to track all my movies. It's a great app. Just did a year in review thing like Spotify does, like a Wrapped, and they had me at 122, I think it was this year. So
that's just movies.
yeah.
Yeah.
So that was like one every, I think they told me one every 2 or 3, a couple a week, basically. I can squeeze in. And then, yeah, that doesn't include, like, we watched all of Veep this year, every single episode. And, like,
Yes.
it doesn't include all that time that was spent. So I do okay. You know, we kind of, again, just schedule that out. We're like, hey, Tuesday night, let's get the kids in bed at a good time. You know, sometimes that doesn't work out. Depends on how they're feeling. But, you know, let's get them in bed, sit down by 8 and watch this movie we've been wanting to watch, and then just go to bed. You know, you just have to, everything with kids is just schedule, blocking time out for yourself.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It is. You got to have that structure. And our oldest now, he's getting to the age where he's also wanting to stay up late. So even that, it's like, okay, kids are going to be down. We're going to get to like have time. Now that's even getting cut into because he wants to stay up and hang out and watch a show or a movie or a sports something. So yeah, it's crazy. I think it's so interesting that you have been doing social media for so long, and really, like you mentioned, in the last couple of years, really started growing. But you had to really remind yourself, okay, I can't let this consume me, because it feels like that's very easy to do when you start getting some traction and success. It does become consuming. I'm way further behind you in all of those metrics, but even now in some of the growth that I see, you still feel that pressure of like, all right, I gotta like put something up, I gotta engage, I gotta jump online and check and everything. And that's a really tough thing, especially when you got a wife, kids, and a job to try to keep in its place. It's not easy.
No, it is. And that's like, you have to just, I've just always treated it like a hobby. It's because it is. I mean, the only reason I started making this stuff because like I have a hobby that I'd love to connect with other people who are like-minded, and that's what's great about social media. It's one of the positives of social media is I could find that group of people that also had collections or had interests in similar things, movies, genres. But that's what it was. It's always been a hobby. It's why, you know, people ask me at my day job, and I'm not like shy about it. Like everybody knows that I have this. In fact, working in marketing, it's probably helped me land jobs more than it's hurt anything. Just like knowing that I can build a community and like I have the background. But, you know, they've asked me like, hey, when are you gonna like quit and like just go do this full time? Because they're like, you must be making a little bit, and I'm like, yeah, I'm making money. It's nice to finally be seeing some money come in, but I'm just not gonna quit because when I quit, it becomes a job. So, and it's no longer a hobby. So I'm just super fortunate that I've had a hobby that I just get to talk into a camera about, and people care, and sponsors care, and people want me to, you know, see their movie and talk about their movie and use my platform, but also just like the organic community that just interacts with me just keeps me going. Like money comes and goes. It's very up and down. It's not consistent. Like none of it's consistent. So it's all just for fun. And I'm like, if I have a good month, well, great. Like let's put some of the money away and maybe we can do that thing around the house we've been talking about doing for a while. And like, if I don't, well, that's why I have my day job and I know I'm getting paid and I have a salary. So at least I have that to fall back on. It's just, I just try not to, but I do stress about it. I mean, I do like, you always think you have to do more. Like
Always.
I hit 100,000 followers on Instagram and I was like, all right, this is it. I got to be doing more. And then it was like 200, 300, 400. I remember when I hit 100,000 on YouTube, which was a few years ago, and it was like, okay, now this is the big leagues. Like, how am I going to get to 1 million? And like, just the reality is there might not be 1 million people who care. and that's okay. Like I have this core group, and as long as I'm still having fun doing about it, as long as I'm still having fun talking about it and doing it, then I'm going to keep doing it.
That's
Yeah.
doing about it, man.
That's doing about it. So as long as I get that, it's going to keep going. And the day that I'm like, and I've come close a couple times where I've just been like, I'm going to quit. And some of it was because just like negativity that you get hit with online as you get bigger, just some of the nastiness that comes with that. I've said, this is it, I'm done. But like, I still like doing it. So you just have to ignore that stuff and move on. But you gotta have tough skin and just like not, when it becomes a job, when you can't pay your mortgage unless you make some sort of sponsored content deal this month, like then it becomes stressful. And then honestly, I think like your content starts to suffer because it's a job. It's your livelihood now, and you're not just having fun. It's not just like you got a little bonus and now you get to make a video about some movie and yay, they're going to give you a little bit of money to help promote this movie. Like that's fun to do.
That's fun.
But if I'm stressed out and having to email people and being like, is there anything this month that I can, work on, anything I can do to help you? Do you want to sponsor my channel? Whatever. Too stressful. Like you're going to get burnt out quicker that way. I think that is why you see a lot of like the full-time creators, like they get burnt out pretty fast. They might have like a real fast rise and make a bunch, but then it's burnout and they go and do something else because it's impossible to do this. I don't know, for a long term as a full-time job. The people that are successful at it, I give a ton of props to, like that have had podcasts for a decade and just keep going and going and going. It is hard when I think that's why it's easier for celebrities and athletes, people to have those things. They don't have to worry about it. They're just having fun.
Their main source of revenue is coming, from their contract or from, whatever movies they're doing.
It's a hobby for them.
Yeah. Yeah. And they have money to throw at it, to buy all the equipment.
Right.
They can buy all the, editors, producers, booking agencies. They can do all of that.
Yeah.
And so, it's, you definitely have to put up those safeguards because those social media platforms, man, they'll just let you work for them for free.
Oh yeah.
I mean, YouTube to a degree will pay you with the ad stuff, and I know they're competing more with Patreon on stuff like that, and even Twitch with some live stuff, some streaming stuff. But yeah, people who make money, like their income is social media, man, I cannot even imagine the just sheer volume of work that is. No days off.
No.
That's why they get burnt out.
Yeah, there's no days off, and you're constantly you're dealing with an algorithm that doesn't care that you have, that this is your income.
Yes,
so you can easily go from getting millions of views on stuff to getting thousands of views. And
they change them constantly.
Yeah, and not know why. Like, and then you have to try something new, and that's stressful versus like, I can just keep doing what I'm doing, and if something doesn't hit, well then it doesn't hit. On to the next one. I'll try some new stuff, but like realistically, I do what I do, and that's, some of them will pop off and some won't, and hey, whatever. But you're right. I mean, YouTube at least pays, and like Twitch and stuff. Like, I'll tell you, Instagram, like Meta, Facebook gives you a little bit for your reels. It's really not much. Instagram doesn't pay a dime.
Nothing.
So like I think people have that false assumption too, that like I got like 75 million views on Instagram this year from Instagram Reels. That earned $0. So like they earned a ton of money from me and what I was creating along with millions of other people, but they didn't pay back any of that stuff. So there's no money in it really. Just having a bunch of views.
If
you have to be really good.
If you were getting that same level of views on TV, you'd be a very rich man.
Oh yeah. If I was getting them on YouTube, I'd be even a lot better off.
Yeah, yeah.
But yeah, 75 million views in a year on a TV show is like probably one of the top 10 shows on TV.
Oh yeah, you're halfway to the Super Bowl there.
Right.
You
So
got
yeah,
Beyonce at that point.
it's crazy. That's the stress of it. It's like no matter how well you do, you're totally at their mercy of like,
Yes.
hey, will they give me $1 for every 1,000 views this month, or are they going to cut it off and not give me anything?
Yeah.
It comes and goes. Instagram used to pay, now they don't. So
Yeah. It's really weird. Meta especially definitely keeps all the profits.
there's a reason. There's a reason Zuckerberg has so much money.
There is.
Yeah, they pocket
Absolutely.
a lot of that on the backs of a lot of people.
A lot of people. Yeah. Do you think there's any scenario for you where you do this full time? Is it like through YouTube, or have you just made your mind up, like whether professionally or for your own mental clarity, that like I'm just not going to do this full time?
I think I think there's a scenario where it could happen, but it would be different from what I'm doing now. So
Mm.
I like writing the book was like a kind of mini first step towards that because I do really like to write, which I write a lot of like scripts and stuff for my videos, and then honestly most of the time I don't use them when I record. I just go off the cuff. But I'd like to write. That's how I started. I wrote this book like 50,000 words in like 6 weeks. Like
Dang.
I banged it out. Yeah, first draft was done in like a couple of months, and I'm like ready to go. So I
Wait,
liked
did you
doing
do
that.
this with kids? You wrote that with?
Yeah, I just finished it a couple weeks ago.
Wow.
Yeah, we
Dude, good
started
for
in
you.
like
I don't know
yeah,
how you did that.
I just just an hour or two a day and just really cranked it. But I I went to like college for political science and stuff and just wrote papers and papers and
Yes.
papers. And so like a 25, 30 page paper was not out of the norm.
Yeah.
So I had to write a lot and I like to write. It's not done. We have edits and stuff, but yeah, if I
It's
could do
impressive.
something like that, like if I knew that I had that and I was like, okay, my official job title is going to be like, I'm writing books and I'm like an author. And on the side, I have some social media income, or at that point, if I was going full time, like did a podcast or something more, because I've done podcasts in the past. Props to you for starting one. They take a ton of work.
Yeah.
I've done probably like 50 or 60 podcast episodes in the last
Really?
couple of years, and
Yeah.
I couldn't do it anymore. I had to cut that because I didn't have the time. So that would be the thing, is like I wouldn't want it to just be your social media guy. Like it would need to be a bigger, like I'm helping produce a movie right now, and if I could do more of that and that was some income plus writing, and then having social media as sort of like a buffer to some of that stuff, then it could happen. But I don't think I'd ever leave where it's just like all I have is, YouTube and
Yeah.
Instagram videos, and that's what I'm doing. I honestly scares me too much, I think, to do that.
It
So
is a huge risk, especially because, unlike the celebrities we were talking about, where, you're talking about big chunks of money for these projects. Like,
yeah.
okay,
I'm not Travis Kelce. I'm not getting 75 million for my podcast.
yeah, exactly. And or even like these actors or these athletes that do it. Like, I know Paul George, an NBA player, for those who don't know, he does a lot of podcasting. He takes a lot of heat for it too. But,
Yeah.
I forget how much money that guy's making. I think it's over like 40 million a year, and just to basically not play basketball at this point. But,
Yeah.
that's very different when that's your source of income versus, I'm sure he makes good money off of YouTube and sponsorships with his podcast,
Right.
but like he's an NBA player. These guys,
Right.
Kevin Hart's a world-renowned actor, comedian. Like
Yeah.
they are not making money that they're living off of this stuff. They're still making checks from Jumanji and stuff like
Yeah.
that.
And like, yeah, insurance just, I mean, that's the other big thing too, is my wife doesn't work right now. So like she'd have to go back to work. We'd have to have insurance some way, because I'm not trying to pay for it out of pocket, because it's insane. Like unless you're Kevin Hart and it just doesn't matter and you'll pay for whatever.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, if somebody came to me and was like, we'll give you $1 million a year to do a podcast, well then, yeah, I don't
Make
think
a podcast.
yeah, I don't think anybody I work with right now would be like, how dare you leave?
Yeah,
They'd be
exactly.
like, yeah, dude, go. Like, but without that guarantee and like some sort of a nest egg that you know you can fall back on. It's really hard to do this stuff.
Yeah, it is. It really is. So, well, I will be interested to see like what you do with that, your book, movie you're making. Like, hopefully, it like grows into more opportunities outside of just social media. I did want to ask you because you mentioned you went to college for political science. What did you originally want to do with that degree? I imagine reviewing movies on Instagram wasn't necessarily what you had in mind with the political science
no,
degree.
the digital marketing I do now wasn't the plan either. That was all self-taught. No, I honestly thought I was going to law school.
Really?
I I graduated from college in 3 years. So I like banged it out pretty quick. I had like a 3.8 GPA. There was a good shot at me getting into some decent. I wasn't going to go to Harvard Law, but like I went to UMass and had a 3.8. I was going to get into some sort of law school in New England for sure. I was talking to my, the counselors and the heads of the department about it, and they were pushing me that way. But then I just thought about it, and I was like, I'm already X amount in debt, and I'm 21. If I go to law school, that puts me at 24 with extra debt, like extraordinarily more debt because of what law school costs compared to just, undergrad. Now I'm 24, I'm coming out well into 6 figures in debt. And it's like, you got to go work 90 hours a week as a, whatever, I forget. Clerk or whatever at a law firm and like get paid. I was reading just these horror story articles about people who work in Washington, D.C. who are 30 years old and, they're 250 grand in debt and they don't have enough gas to get to the office in the morning because they don't have any money for it. And it's like, and they're doing these super important jobs. So it just felt like the system was not set up well. And I was like, I feel like I also felt like I wanted to get out of school and just get into the world and just like do more myself. Like I was always the belief that like, I don't need the piece of paper to tell me, hey, I'm good at this or that, or like I work in marketing. I don't have any marketing education. I just played around on the internet and got an entry-level marketing job and just worked up from there and played around on social media. So that was the plan. And whether it was politics was potentially part of it too. But my dad was into local politics. It was on like school boards and stuff. And I just saw what that did. And that was
rough.
And that was 20 years ago. So I can't imagine what they're like now. So I was just like, I love that I did it. And I have the writing background and the research background that came with it. And that will hopefully allow me to write more books. And I'd love to write some like historical stuff and get beyond just like movies and, larger like social cultural impact, tie movies in somehow maybe, but explore bigger themes, political, cultural stuff. But that's what scared me. Yeah. Law school just terrified me.
Were you leaning on going towards politics or getting more into like actual, like being a specific type of lawyer, like a business lawyer, something like that?
I was definitely leaning more towards the law. The politics thing would have been potentially like an aside to that if something had come out of it and I had gotten involved in a way. And, I considered that a possibility down the road as something that could happen if I go into law. But I think the law I was looking at was, I considered entertainment for a while because I liked movies and stuff, but being in New England, not a ton of opportunities. So you would have to move, and I wasn't going to move away from my whole family. So I really just wanted to be kind of I used to joke about it. We used to go to like these small towns for vacation, and there'd be like, there's always like a law firm. Yeah. And I'm like, that guy's living he gets to live in this little vacation town. He's the only lawyer in town. He makes just enough to just get by. He works for himself. He has his own little office. So just like one of those, just like kind of just being a general practice, like, family lawyer or something. Just kind of, I liked the opportunity to be able to work for yourself and control your own destiny a little bit, like decide how many cases you're going to take on, or how much work you're going to put in during a week. And if you want to work 20 hours one week, you can. There's no like, I always wanted to work for myself. So that was kind of the driving. That's where lawyer came in. I was like, if I'm a lawyer, I can work for myself. So that's cool to me. And I know I have like the skills to go do it. I can write and research and all that. But I don't really know where I'd be right now. But this is why I like doing the social media stuff above all else. Because like I work for myself when I do that stuff. It's all up to me, the creative side, the financial side, doing taxes, doing all that fun stuff, managing, signing, contracts and stuff for different deals. Like I get to do it all. So I guess I've always just wanted that above all else, just like own my own thing.
Yeah, I definitely resonate with the wanting to work for yourself part of it. There's just I know it's risky. There's a lot of risk involved with that, but there's a lot of reward too. And it doesn't necessarily mean less work, as you know.
No, it means more for sure.
But it's just being that you're the captain of your own ship, and especially like, I don't know. I mean, I work for a pretty flexible company too, and so I'm saying this not so much at them in my current situation as much as it's just how I feel. Is like it really irks me when I have to request time off, because I'm like, you don't own my time. It's my time,
Right.
and that's why for me, the idea of working for myself, and I've told this to my wife, it's really not about a dollar amount and making money. I've told her I will know I have arrived when I don't have to request time off, when I just control my own time. And if we're going to take a week vacation, we're just going to plan it and take the week vacation. And so to me, it's a lot more about like, I'll know I've arrived when there's a lifestyle element, when there's a control of my time, more than like, oh, we make X amount of dollars or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's
sure.
like rebellious in me, or because to your point, there is a steadiness, there is a consistency with having that job. You do need the healthcare, especially in this country. It's tied to your work, and so it's a necessity. It can be a security, but there's always that pull to like work for yourself and that entrepreneurial spirit of kind of making charting your own course, if you will.
Yeah, no, I think I would say, it's not about the money either. It's more just about like, I would, if you ask me what the American dream is, it's not the 9 to 5 with a steady salary and you get your house and your kids and like all the stuff that I have now that I'm very thankful for. Yes. But is that really my dream? Like, no, the dream would be able to do all of that and work for myself, doing something that I'm good at, which, I think that's just human nature. I mean, for hundreds and hundreds and thousands of years, like people were just kind of on their own and just, you did what you could. And if you were a blacksmith, like you worked out of your house and people brought work to you and you did it. And like, you didn't have to request time off and, do a performance review. And like, you worked as much as you wanted to and as much as you needed to. And, you probably enjoyed what you did. Maybe you didn't, but you know what? It provided and you were in charge. So it had to have felt better. Yeah. And I have no issue. Again, like my current company is super flexible. And when I need time off, I get the time off and there's never been an issue, but that's why I work for them. Honestly, that's what drove me to them, was like, they have that kind of entrepreneurial, there's not a lot of micromanagement. I can go and do what I need to do. But you still have the red tape and all the corporate stuff. And I am still tied to, a job and have to do all the things as an employee. So yeah, the American dream for me is like be able to live the life I'm living without having to rely on somebody else who, I mean, realistically, we all know, like if there's a bad couple of years, who knows if I'm there anymore? Who knows if anyone's there? They're a business and they have to do what's right for the business, versus at least if it's me and I have to make some hard decisions, it's just me affecting myself. And I'm just more in control, which that would be the dream if we can get there.
Yeah, it is definitely a give and take there. But I even think too, just kind of the way economics are structured in this country, like you really do benefit, even in the long run, if you can establish yourself working for yourself.
Yeah.
You're going to be a lot better off that way as well. You know, whether growing a business or a brand or something like that. If you are willing to take the risk and can calculate it out and do everything, it works. And I admire you doing it too, because you know where we're in the same boat is, you know, we're trying to build that out, and we both have kids, and so for me, there's definitely a risk management in
Yeah.
that because I just can't be as risky as
No.
if you know
No.
I was single or if it was just my wife and I. Like I got kids, college possibly is around the corner, cars are coming up quick, you know, more
Oh yeah.
insurance, and yeah, it just really you just kind of got to find a way to balance it. And to your point earlier, you got to try to do that without going crazy and without overworking and distancing yourself from the family or your whole identity being about your followers, your engagement, your like shares and stuff like that. And that's no
Yeah.
small task, you know.
No, it's true though. Yeah, once you bring the kids in the equation, it's the risk management is much different. And
Very,
but I mean, I wanted that, so that's the trade you make. Like I could easily be single and living in Boston and going to LA a few times a month, going to New York City for premieres. Like I've been invited to things that I can't go to because we can't get childcare for that weekend, or and it is what it is. I live close to Boston, but I'm not there in the city that I can just go to something at night last minute. So yeah, if I was doing that and that's the life I wanted to live, I probably wouldn't be. I'd be working for myself, just doing this stuff because all I have to worry about is me and making rent, right? And it's like, okay, I can come up with $2,000 a month or whatever to live. So yeah, it's once the kids come in, that's why. And like honestly, the stuff that I'm doing, I even just more want for like my kids to think is like cool and like, hey, my dad wrote a book, and like it might be on Barnes and Noble's shelf if you go in there. Like that's cool. Like that's the stuff that I'm like, I don't even care if it sells 5 copies. I just can say I did it, and that's something that they can be proud of and like look up to, and just think I'm not a dork when they're like 13. Like maybe they'll think I'm still a little bit cool because like I worked on a movie or I wrote this cool book or something. So that's it. It's not about the money or anything, but it's a risk, man. It's like renting versus buying your house. Like I work for this company. Basically they rent my time for a certain amount of money.
yeah,
And I say, yes, that's a fair deal. And I agree to do it. But if you ever leave and go work for yourself, now you've got to pay a mortgage here. You're fully in on that. You own that. Like that's up to you. And it means you got to be 100% bought in. And it means the risk is a lot higher because I can't just cut my lease and say, forget it. I'm committed. So it's kind of nice to have both, that I have that stability that I could cut or, cut back on if I had to. Like you have that option, but you've also got to be fully in on your own stuff and hope that turns into something bigger someday. And if it does, well then beautiful. That's what I'll be doing. If I can write 2 books a year and it pays enough to keep the family going with social media, then I would do that. But yeah, we're not there yet. Maybe someday.
Dude, that is so impressive that you wrote it that quickly. I had, when the stuff about this podcast was like blowing up on Threads and everything, I did have a publishing company, or is actually more like an agent, reach out to me about the idea of a book, and I was like, I appreciate that you would consider me for that. There is too much going on right now. Maybe down the road, let me get a few other things established before I take on another.
No, it's
project.
I've been telling people on YouTube and like on social media that I've been writing a book for like 3 years. Like no joke. I keep saying like my goal this year is to write it. I've written thousands and thousands of words and pages, and none of it ever formed into a book because of time or lack of focus. Some of it turned into like little essays that got posted. They're actually one in like a Blu-ray release of a movie that's a little essay and a booklet, but like none of it was ever published officially because same thing. So this year I was like, all right, I feel like we're a little bit stable with where the family's at and the kids are at. My wife's not pregnant or we don't have a newborn. It's like, and the timing, it was like November. I was like, okay, I'm going to be off during Thanksgiving week. I'm going to be off for Christmas week. I could probably bang this out. So let's try it. So
and you did it.
It got lucky, and it was a good topic that I was passionate about. So that was like easy. It was just brain dump at that point.
Yeah. Do you have a release date, or are you guys going to go to publishers and pitch it?
I've got the publisher.
Oh, good for you.
I'm working with them. Yeah, that's what also kind of kicked me into gear. I actually had somebody who said, hey, we'll do this with you and get you an editor, and we'll, do the hard stuff. We'll design the book cover and, get it into stores, all the stuff that I was like, I don't know how to do this. So that kind of kickstarted me, especially the editing part, just knowing I'd have somebody looking at it. So they're doing that now and editing the first draft. I'll have some adjustments. We're shooting like late summer, early fall 2025. It's probably like on the shelf.
Nice.
I'm a little bit ahead of schedule, but now the second draft being that we're out of the holidays and it's like back to busy again might take longer. So we'll probably get back on schedule where I was. That's why I wanted to be ahead of schedule in the first half because I had the time. So we'll see. Sometime this year though, in 2025, it'll be coming hopefully like August, September-ish in there.
Nice. Well, definitely let me know. We'll get you back on the podcast to promote it.
I'd love to.
That'd be great. Now, I will admit, I didn't realize in my research, and maybe that was my fault, that you were a Celtics fan. Not that I have anything wrong with Celtics fans, but I am a Mavs fan. And so, given what just happened in the finals, where we lost you, honestly, I went into that thinking like, man, Luka's just gonna have to turn into like basketball Jesus and basically average 50 points a game because
pretty much
Boston is such a good team. Like the fact that like you guys have Porzingis and he can legitimately be like your fourth best player on a night is just ridiculous.
Or just not even play. He didn't even play all the way up until that first finals game. So like, yeah, they don't even. I love having him, but it's like, it probably would have been a closer series, but yeah, they probably still would have won without him.
Now let me ask you this, and this is a bit of a sports nerd turn for our listeners here. But hang with us. Do you think this has been such a topic of discussion going into the holidays with the NBA? For those who don't know, NBA ratings are down quite a bit. They've been going down. So there's a big discussion like, is the NBA broken? Like, what do you think? Do you think the NBA is broken? Do you think it's too much three-pointers, no defense? Or do you actually kind of like the flow of what NBA basketball is now?
I don't mind the flow because it's honestly like it's a faster paced game, which can make it more entertaining. I know it's a lot of shooting, but like it is fast paced. There's a ton of points being scored. There are a couple fundamental issues with the NBA. The end of the games is brutal to watch with all the free throws. Like they need to fix, especially in the regular season. Like there's no need for the last 2 minutes to take 20 minutes. It's a regular season game. They've talked about doing like the target score or something like they do in the All-Star game. Like just whoever gets to 130 first wins. Great. Like they need to change something for the regular season. I get it for playoffs. But I don't mind because if you really watch, there's a ton more like movement and it's so fast paced. The ball is flying around the court. People are constantly moving versus when I grew up, I'm watching the Celtics were terrible when I was growing up, but you watching the Lakers and it's the Kobe and Shaq show. And it's like Kobe ISOs a guy and takes a fadeaway, or they feed it into Shaq and he kind of slams the ball into the ground a few times, makes post move. And like, it was entertaining enough. It was more physical, but I don't mind the flow of the game right now. I think their ratings problem, and I think that they think it all has a problem to do with the game, and it's not. I think it's just a matter of the NBA is like still kind of hard to watch.
They do make it really hard to watch their
So
games.
yeah, and that's a problem. And baseball has the same problem that like football doesn't have. Like you have Red Zone and you have NFL Network, and like you can watch pretty much any game you want at any time.
Yeah.
Even the local cable channel 4 here in New England shows the Patriots games. It's like you don't even need a cable package. You can watch the game.
Yeah.
Versus I couldn't watch some of the Celtics games because I have Fubo TV as my cable package to watch sports, and they don't have access to Turner. So if the game was on TNT, like I couldn't watch the Celtics game. I have to log into my parents' cable account and try to see if it would let me get onto their TNT app. And like it was just obnoxious. So you're just going to go to an illegal streaming site, which, I can't advocate for, but like they're losing a ton of viewers. There's a clip of LeBron literally watching a game on one of the illegal streaming sites on an iPad.
That's wild.
On the bench during a game, because people were like, I know that website. That's like the streaming site for the NBA. So I don't think they're losing viewership. I think they're as big as ever, especially internationally.
Yes.
But they're doing a horrible job at like monetizing their viewership and making it easy for people to watch without having to go and jumping around, jump through hoops, I guess.
I think that's a huge thing where they make it so tough to watch. Like
So
even the NFL to a degree with some of the streaming stuff has made it a little more difficult. Like you have to have Peacock to watch it, but still their games are so much more accessible. I know you're talking about a 17 game regular season versus
It's
an
like
82.
one game a week might be on Peacock.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, they've got to make their games accessible, because I think to your point, it's weird. You see how bad the ratings are, but you're like, I know people still talk about it. Like they dominate on social media, which means people are watching it. They're not just watching like shorts and clips. Like,
no, it's a clear number 2 behind the NFL. And I honestly think that,
and college football.
Yeah. And I think if you went internationally outside of soccer,
basketball's number 2.
Basketball's number 2 internationally.
Yeah.
Like nobody cares about the NFL in Europe so much, but they love basketball. Yeah. Basketball has leagues everywhere. They got leagues in Turkey. They got leagues in all over Europe. They got Russian leagues. It's massive. South America has a bunch of leagues in Brazil, and it's huge. And these guys are international. Michael Jordan's still probably the most famous person on the face of the planet.
I know, right?
Like everybody knows Michael Jordan, and it's just everybody knows LeBron James. Like you could say LeBron James anywhere, and people are like, yeah, like I know who that is.
I think another issue is, and I see this in real time with my son. So he is a very casual Mavericks fan because I'm a Mavericks fan. And so if I have him on, I have that.
Yeah.
But his favorite player in the league is Wemby, followed by Luka, followed by Steph Curry. And so he is much more a fan of players than he is a singular team. And I think that's a really unique thing about the NBA. Whereas like NFL, college football, it's really about the brand. The players come through. And it's great when you got a guy like Tom Brady who comes through, right, as the New England Patriot. But you're still going to be a Patriots fan after Tom Brady leaves. And so I think there's a bit too where I don't know how the NBA plays that out, in leaning into people being, especially younger generations, maybe being more fans of players than a specific team. And as the player switches teams, their loyalty switches. Like, I think that's just making the game accessible.
That's it. Yeah. No, that's what I was going to say. I mean, I would love to watch Wemby play more, or Anthony Edwards. He's kind of having an off year, but I think he's a very exciting player. There's a ton of guys that I almost forget they exist sometimes because unless they're playing the Celtics, you just don't. There isn't a Sunday that goes by when you're watching football that you don't remember Patrick Mahomes is playing. Yeah. They find a way to get him in front of you. And the NBA, I think, it does a really... It's funny because all their sponsors use the athletes nonstop. They're in a ton of commercials and everything. But the league themselves does a horrible job of actually getting the player playing the game in front of the fans. Because I can't tell you. I've seen a few Wemby clips. I don't think I've ever seen him play a game fully. I was so excited when they played the Celtics like last year, just to be able to watch him play and not have to like find a stream somewhere to watch their game. And it's just, and they're not. They also do a lot of West Coast, and you're missing half the country when your games are starting at 10:30 at night. So a guy like Wemby who plays in San Antonio, the East Coast isn't watching. I'm not watching. I honestly, I can't tell you. I don't watch the Lakers because just like they don't put them on prime time anymore. When it was Shaq and Kobe, they might be on prime time, but they're on at 11
East
o'clock.
Coast, I mean, you're getting that at 10:30 is tip off.
Yeah, I'm just
That's
not
wild.
I'm not gonna watch. I've never seen a full Lakers game or a Clippers game unless they're like in the playoffs in a prime time 8 p.m. Eastern slot.
Yeah.
So
Even the
that's
NFL,
the thing
way they
football
do
does
that,
better.
you know, their Sunday night game, Monday night games, Thursday, they're running 8 o'clock your time. You know, 8:30 at the latest, so you still can
They
get
find a
whole
way to
game
make
in
that work.
and get to bed and everything. I think the NBA does a great job with their live event. Their live event is great because they really have it down to a science in terms of like every game's about 2 hours to 2 hours and 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's fantastic. It just is that accessibility. I mean, I know
No.
it's a lot of threes and stuff, but
The game's always changed though. Like that's always, I mean, you couldn't even, well, that was college basketball, but like you couldn't even dunk for a little bit playing college ball. Like the game changes. And you know what? The threes thing, it'll come and go and it'll change again because right now you have a bunch of talented shooters. If you get a guy like Wemby into the league who's a freak and changes, like the league changed because of Shaq. Like there's a reason everybody had to have a 7'2" center for 15 years because you had to compete with Shaq.
Yeah.
Like
Shaq,
they're-
Yao Ming, all those guys in that
so
era.
yeah, the reason everybody has 3-point shooters right now is because you've had to compete with the Warriors and Steph Curry for the last 7 or 8 years. So you have to match that intensity. And as things shift, it will shift again. It's not a game issue. The product is pretty good, other than the last 2 minutes they could fix up and some of the fouls. But nah,
Yeah,
they
those little things, that's the same thing as like the kickoff with football where the NFL changed that. Like that doesn't really change the game. It's to your point, like the NFL gives you access to their games. And even if you are someone who don't live in the same market as your team, they're still going to let you
have access.
You're still going to have access that even the NBA
And
is weird about.
And they flex games and they make sure to put the right people in prime time and move them from the 1 o'clock to the 4 o'clock. If you know, like they make those smart scheduling changes, and it's a more premium. You only have 17 games to watch, so it's more of an event, and every game is an event. Whereas, like even if it's a Thursday night and it's not your team playing, one win or loss can greatly impact like where your team's standing is. So you're going to tune in and be like, what happens in this game?
Yeah.
NBA regular season is just like, it's kind of a pre-written, like, okay, we know the 10 teams that are going to be in the playoffs. Like, it's almost, can we just go to that and just play the playoff series? Because playoff basketball is good, but the regular season is just kind of like, they could probably shorten that. I know they try to do the in-season tournament. I don't know that anybody really cares. I personally,
there's
as a fan, I'm like,
yeah, with it in-season tournament of the All-Star game where they're like, we'll give them money. It's like
why do I
watching these guys who are making tens of millions of dollars win $500,000 does not motivate me to want to watch.
No, it motivates them to play hard. I'll give them that. Like it does. Some of these guys are like, I'd love to win that money for like the last guy on the bench or something, and they play hard. Or they want $500,000 for winning the All-Star game so they can go buy, whatever and not worry about it. But why do I care as a fan?
Yeah, exactly.
I'm getting none of it.
Yeah, the NFL really does have a great business model. And the business of sports I find really interesting. I don't feel like it gets covered a lot. It's more about the event and what happens on the field or the court. But the business of sports is pretty fascinating thing, especially in America.
No, it is. That's why I watched a lot of those documentaries too, like you were talking about earlier. Like a lot of that stuff is, I took a class called Sports and Politics when I was in college, which was really interesting too. Yeah, I got into some like international stuff. We were talking about college athletes and, payment to college athletes and like NIL type stuff. Like 15 years ago,
Yeah.
like, covering those kind of topics. And
Yeah.
there's a lot of interesting stuff there too behind the
Oh yeah.
scenes.
Oh yeah. The business of college football right now is just, it's wild.
Crazy.
It's just
Yeah.
crazy. But even that would be such an interesting class, because even, the like with FIFA and all the
Yeah.
trouble they got in with, giving the World Cup to places like Russia and Qatar, where the sports washing and the business and politics of sports and all, it's so
Yeah.
interesting how that stuff works. So we need to like um, circle back when you come back on in the summer to promote your book. Let's do some more
We
sports
can do some
business talk.
sports.
I love that.
I'm in on that. Sports is my number two, and the behind the scenes stuff
I love it.
and just like the cultural impact that people have had, and
Yes.
Muhammad Ali and Bill Russell and all those Jim Brown, like guys over the years that have been heavily involved. There's a lot that
Yeah.
goes on in sports.
Well, you were even mentioning Michael Jordan, most recognizable. Like, he's literally someone who, like, he is associated with excellence. So people will be like, "Oh yeah, Jim, he's like the Michael Jordan of sales."
Yeah, right.
Jeff is like the Michael Jordan of movie reviews. It's like he has just become synonymous with like
That's
excellence, like crazy, the cultural relevance and impact of that. So, man, thanks so much for
Thank you.
meeting today. Why don't you quickly tell people where they can find you, what other projects you got going on, and how they can connect with you?
Yeah, so I think I've changed this now on all my platforms. So it should just be at Jeff Rauseo. It's JEFFRAUSEO. No spaces or anything, just all one word. But that's YouTube, Instagram, TikTok, if it's still around by the time this episode comes out. We'll see. Threads, you name it, everywhere that I've got an account, it's all under my name now. And yeah, hopefully, you can follow me there for updates on the book as I go through that. I've got some other cool stuff coming up that in the spring, I'm going out to LA for a little bit to do some content and have a couple meetings and hang out with some people. So that'll be cool. I can't say too much, but
I like it.
There's a lot of stuff coming, but mostly just like, as always, there's going to be movie recommendations and my thoughts on new stuff that I discover that I just want to share, because that's what half my page is. It's just me. Like, I watched something and I was like, wow, that was cool. I should tell other people about this because it's not on Netflix or Disney or anywhere else.
Yeah.
Like, I want other people to see it. So yeah, that's what you'll get from me over there. Plenty of movie reviews and recommendations and some deep dives into some of those topics. Streaming, physical media, pictures of my collection, all that good stuff. But that's where I'm at. Pretty much every platform you'll be able to find me.
Great. Well, and for anyone listening or watching, you can find all of Jeff's links in the description of this episode below. So you guys go support him, check his work out, give him a follow, give him some support and love. Jeff, thanks for coming on, man. We went 90 minutes, and I swear I could have probably gone another 90 with you here. So we're going to have to get you back on, all right?
Yeah, we will for sure. We'll do it again.
Hey, everybody. However you listen to the podcast today, I want to say thank you for being a part of this conversation. A couple quick notes on how to stay connected. First of all, if you're watching this on YouTube, you can hit that subscribe button, and that will keep you notified on any new guests or content that we have on the YouTube channel. That's also a great way to stay connected with the community there. If you are listening to this on one of the podcast streaming platforms, thank you. Be sure to follow the page there, as well as take about 5 seconds to leave a 5-star review. And that really makes a big difference in helping us grow the show and reach other people who would also enjoy this conversation. And speaking of other people who would enjoy this conversation, if you have a friend that you think would enjoy this conversation, be sure to send this episode to them and invite them to listen. We would love for them to be part of this growing, amazing community. And as always, I am on Threads and Instagram and would love to connect with you there. So thank you guys so much for listening. You guys are truly the best community out there. I love getting to know you. I love getting to have met so many of you through different online channels. I love the community that we're building and the conversations we're having. And I'm really, really grateful that you are part of it. So thank you guys for being part of this community, and we'll see you next time.